Day 889 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 579,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,370 in the past day, adding to some consistently high daily numbers still. Then as for hardware losses, 9 tanks, 42 APVs, 33 artillery, and 77 small vehicles of various types, some not even with 4 or more wheels. Then on the map, headed straight to Lviv in Ukraine, as what appeared to be a Dutch F-16AM fighter jet variant spotted overhead in the skies of the oblast, with reportedly Ukraine having received its first batch of F-16 jets, marking a significant milestone upgrade and modernization of Ukraine's overall military. Now, according to several reports, some small number of these warplanes have been delivered to Ukraine, with one such source specifically mentioning 6 jets delivered from the Netherlands, which, if true, would double my previous conservative guess of 3. And so it appears that the arrival comes yesterday, just before the end of the July deadline set by the international coalition supporting Ukraine for F-16 jets. Astonishingly, these F-16 jets have already begun combat missions, primarily, if not exclusively so far, in an air defense capacity. While the Ukrainian government has not officially confirmed the jet's arrival, social media has been flooded with images and videos purportedly showing the F-16's jet or jets in Ukraine. And there is something very surreal about seeing these jets fly in Ukrainian skies. So these first reportedly or supposedly 6 Dutch-sourced jets out of 79 pledged jets in total from Belgium, Denmark, Norway and the Netherlands will certainly find some useful short-term and intermediate-term usage, focusing firstly on air defense, then spreading their wings out from that point to take on a more offensive posture. And I don't recall if I've said this in the past, but the introduction of any new platform incurs the risk of a potential loss or losses of said platform. And although a loss of this type of aircraft, due to a direct combat loss, is unlikely, it's still not an impossibility and should therefore inherently be something that is an accepted reality of warfare. And with that disclaimer out of the way, Ukraine will never lose as many jets as Russia has already lost throughout this war. It's actually an impossibility at this stage, as Ukraine never had that many jets to spare in the first place, based on what Russia has already lost, with Ukraine only ever holding about 100 to 160 jets, depending on the source. But as for this latest F-16 introduction, one thing's for certain, it's a huge morale boost to the Ukrainian people, and as such, a huge morale blow to the Russian military at large, which in turn may have the effect of causing Russian aviation to take a much more defensive posture on any frontline vector. Then also on the Ukrainian map yesterday, Russia sent one of the largest waves of one-way Shahed attack drones into Ukrainian territory since the beginning of the war. And it's possible that the Russian MOD's expectation was such that they needed to expend their production load in hearing about the upcoming arrival of the F-16s, which could actually be used to neutralize these attacks. But as for this latest event, all Shahed drones were neutralized, 40 of which were aimed solely at the capital of Kyiv over the course of 7 hours. Also, 1 out of 1 Kh-59 cruise missiles was intercepted on top. And so this is all done in combination with mobile fire groups, tactical aviation, army aviation, anti-aircraft missile units, and electronic warfare for repelling such attacks. However, we don't have any confirmations as to whether or not the new F-16s were involved in repelling this latest large wave attack. Then looking more deeply into the Ukrainian map, as the Ukrainian forces conducted an operation near Kupanki in Luhansk, just beyond the border to Kharkiv, as they reportedly repelled Russian forces further back to behind the Zerbets River, something which is awaiting a map update. Now, an event like this would be very ideal for the AFU to put Russian forces into more challenging positions behind those water bodies. And it's no coincidence that Ukraine carried out operations to do so right here, as it's where it intersects between Russian positions after the river and Russian positions that are struggling just before the river, as you can see a little bit further north there. Then, of course, on the map, there was the case of the Russian Mi-8 helicopter that was shot down near Donetsk in eastern Ukraine, said to be about 50 kilometers back. Multiple Russian telegram channels reported on the incident, with some claiming it was mistakenly hit by Russian air defense systems, which is certainly a possibility. However, new information suggests that Ukrainian drones may have been responsible for downing the helicopter as it was taking off. And if accurate, this incident could represent the first successful use of drones, possibly quadcopter-style FPV drones, to shoot down a Russian helicopter in this war-in conflict. And being that the attack allegedly occurred at a considerable distance from the front lines, it demonstrates an expanded reach for Ukrainian drone operations, if confirmed. And ultimately, we could be starting to see the Ukrainian military's adaptation into drone-on-helicopter platforms many miles beyond the front lines, which is something Ukraine has been in no way shy about stating their intent for. Now, something like this would traditionally have been just not plausible, but now some specialized Ukrainian drones can reach speeds well beyond 200 kilometers. Well, up to 217 kilometers as per what I've seen last. Then taking a look more broadly on the map, as in the skies over Kherson, a Ukrainian FPV drone engages in an aerial jousting match with a Russian Supercam S-350 UAV, successfully downing the Russian drone over Ukrainian-held territory. Now, the parachute release of the Russian recon drone, which you can see there, is usually designed for damage mitigation and return to its operators, but this time, automatic parachute deployment was likely engaged as a safety measure after the drone was losing balance of itself after its in-air collision. Then also on the map, somewhere on the map, we saw the Ukrainian military personnel from the 80th Separate Airborne Assault Brigade destroy a Russian BMP. Then we also saw the destroyed Russian 152mm self-propelled gun, the 2S3 Akatsiya, near the village of Tenenkoy in the Donetsk region. Then headed across to some news for today. So straight up, this first piece of news is perhaps a combination of a mobilization blunder, a Russian hardware news update of a sort, and a funny, so all in one. As Russia's military strategy seems to be taking a surprising turn as they're now drafting airfield personnel, including engineering and technical staff, into their assault units. Plus, it appears that even pilots are getting in on the action, with one joining this unit, as reported by well-known Russian aviation-adjacent Telegram channel fighter bomber. Who knew that the skies were so crowded that even these types of personnel could be let go? In fact, Russia cannot get enough pilots, as we've found out from many reports now, which therefore suggests that this such pilot and crew belongs to an aviation unit that has run dry of their aircraft platform type, in which to support the continued engagement of this crew in the rear. So specifically, the post referred to a navigator, which is the individual responsible for navigation, targeting, and weapon systems, and managing various systems on board of a multi-crew jet. So piecing all of this information together, that means Russia would be almost certainly, will really be dealing with the inventory demise of an Su-24 or an Su-34, given that these are multi-crew platforms that require a navigator. And if I was a betting man, I'd have to put my money on the Su-24, which we've not seen this aging Soviet platform in quite some time now. And I have to say, Hermann Göring would be proud, as that's exactly what he did with his Luftwaffe personnel as Germany started losing in World War II. History repeating. Just a little further east. So nothing says everything's going according to plan, quite like cobbling units together out of rear aviation staff. Then into some more news. So China has announced significant changes to its drone export policies effective September 1st, as the Chinese government will ban the export of all unregulated civilian drones that could be potentially used for military purposes. This decision comes amid growing international criticism, particularly from the US and Europe, regarding Russia's stance on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The new restrictions will affect drones with specific capabilities, including those equipped with infrared imaging, laser target indication, and high-precision inertial measurement equipment, putting these items on the export control list. However, China is simultaneously removing temporary restrictions on certain civilian drones, suggesting a nuanced approach to balancing commercial interests with security concerns. Though, out of all of this, the timing is notable, coming shortly after Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba's visit to China, during which he stated that China remains committed to Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. So, as we see, China attempts to navigate complex geopolitical waters, balancing its economic interests, international relationships, and its position as the world's fourth largest weapons exporter, all against the backdrop of potentially helping an old long-term ally. A close eye will be kept on China. Then, to some quick news. Russia has scheduled a meeting of the UN Security Council in connection with the reported Israeli-caused elimination of the head of Hamas, Haniyeh, from just yesterday. So clearly the irony of calling such a Security Council meeting of this type is completely lost on Russia, as they have unquestionably attempted to carry out the same actions against the Ukrainian president. But I won't get into that latest event in too much detail here, but if you're willing, you can check out my links below for my Juzzie News TV channel, where I put up a video on that topic just yesterday. Then headed across to another Russian military mobilization blunder segment. So, Putin has done it again, as the Russian president has increased the sign-on bonus at the federal level for new military recruits to serve in Ukraine to 400,000 rubles, or about 4,600 US dollars, thereby doubling the amount of 195,000 rubles set previous to this. This move clearly addresses recruitment challenges, as Russia faces heavy manpower losses in the ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Now, regional authorities are also offering additional incentives, with Moscow itself, for instance, providing the highest sign-on bonus of 1.9 million rubles, or about 20,000 US dollars. Now, despite Russia covertly recruiting around 30,000 soldiers monthly, there is clearly some concern about the Russian military's ability to sustain such levels, even given the larger Russian apparatus denying such manpower concerns. But in the end, the economic principles of supply and demand do not lie. Then headed across to a couple of quick funnies to round it all off for today, guys. So for the first one, the Kremlin is still on the bandwagon of pushing for increasing their local birth rate, as they stare into the abyss of the statistical reality that Russia is facing a demographic collapse. So here we have Kremlin spokesperson Peskov most recently on the horn pushing this agenda, and who is clearly still completely oblivious to the fact that Russia's permanent population migration to Ukraine, let's call it, continues unabated. Audience members must be rolling their eyes at these Kremlin talking points by this stage. Then rounding off with a final quick funny, so here we have not seeing tanks, armored vehicles, Chinese ATV, four-wheeler golf buggies, or even motorcycles used by Russian soldiers, but instead e-scooters within range of Ukrainian recon drones, obviously, amongst the scorched grassy fields of battle too. Not exactly standard issue equipment, especially from an army we expected so much more from not too long ago. And this is actually getting quite ridiculous. These guys would be constantly directing themselves to charging points every 7 to 15 miles. But with the heavy equipment loads they're carrying, realistically, it's even less than that. And you know, we've already seen one or two bicycles used by Russians in the field, but at this stage, this third-rate army could turn from a motorcycle army to an e-scooter army to a bicycle army in just a hot second. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and subscribe. Check out the links as I've mentioned there a moment ago. And yeah, I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.